Hi, this is Kristin Clark, and I'm here with Bobby Hood, and this is another installment of College Planning Untangled, where we help you simplify the college planning process. Bobby, how are you today?
Just great. Yeah. There's new developments to talk about, and it's always interesting when there's something new and exciting to talk about. But yeah,
Yes.
it's nice. We got a chilly weather here in Dallas, so it's a nice day to be indoors and talk about stuff.
Yeah, big announcement coming out of the SAT group.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we know. I mean, there's this new thing where it's in all the newspapers and stuff that the SAT is going digital, and then there's a few paragraphs of discussion, and that's it. And that's all we know. But yeah, so SAT, they've threatened this for a few years. They said before COVID that they were about to go digital, and then they were going to have the SAT be a test you could take at home. Was
I
what they had
remember
said
that.
before.
Yeah, we
And
talked
we
about that.
all, right. And we all thought that sounded kind of strange because how would students get devices for that? And how do you make that work out? Now they're saying that the SAT is going to be taken digitally, but you can either take it at a test center or a school. So
Yeah,
kind of similar to how the GRE and GMAT are delivered
yeah.
and the MCAT. Yeah.
Yeah, and for parents out there, because parents might not realize that they're still taking it on paper, right? So this is a pretty big change for them. This is a big deal.
Absolutely. I mean, this is interesting too because when I have students tutor with me, I send them a past SAT or ACT test, and I just give them a PDF, and and I say in the notes like, print this out, take it on paper because that's how the real test is. But a good segment of my students show up and they had just taken it on screen, and I'm like, that's not how the real test is. So a big part of tutoring has been, learn how to deal with a paper test. And as a tutor, like, we feel very strongly that, for instance, in a math problem, if it's a geometry problem, well, you are going to be drawing all over the figure with your pencil, right? Or if it's a word problem, often you need to write down each step of the problem. And it's funny if you make a mistake while you're writing down, if you say, okay, it says pencils cost $5 and pens cost $6. If you write the wrong numbers down, then your eyes might see those numbers you wrote, and your brain says, hey, wait, that looks wrong. Even though your brain just told you to write down the wrong number, you might see it. Or if you make a minus sign error when you're adding or subtracting, if you write it down, there's a chance you'll see that error and catch it, which
Right.
is
Well,
why we always say write everything down and then use your calculator as the last step of the problem,
yeah.
right?
Well, Bobby, it makes me wonder because, because we've always dealt with paper and
Mm-hmm.
pen, yeah, right?
Right.
How differently the kiddos' brains may be working these days with paper versus computer, and doing it
Oh,
digitally.
yeah.
Man, there's so many studies that talk about that connection from your brain to your hand, and writing
Mm-hmm.
things out. So that, I mean, it'll be interesting to see just how that affects scores. And,
Oh,
I just look at it.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it and I go, I know me, I can
Okay.
much more easily click a radio button wrong versus filling in a little circle on a test. So, it's
Oh,
just curious how that'll affect us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, when you think about like, yeah, a very common error that students make is they circle the correct answer on the paper and then fill in the wrong bubble. That happens. It's got to be much easier to click the wrong button on the computer. Uh and yeah, and that's part of the thing here too, is that the test is going to be computer adaptive, which probably most people who are listening are not aware of what a computer adaptive test
No,
is,
what is
right?
that?
So the GMAT for business school is the only test test that is adaptive by question, like this is said to be. So you start the test, and I guess sort of they say, okay, theoretically, you have the median score, which would be 1,000 right now. You have a 500 on the math section, the median score, and then they give you a question that's kind of medium-ish in difficulty, and if you get it correct, your score goes up a little bit, and then they ask you a harder question. But if you get it
Mm.
wrong, your score goes down a little bit. They ask you an easier question. So what this means is you can't skip a question. You have to do the questions in the order they're presented. You can't skip around. A big part of test strategy for standardized tests is, do the questions that you know how to do first and come back and work on those harder questions later. A computer adaptive test like this is very, very stressful compared to the other tests, although it's different kinds of stress. So the SAT and ACT currently on paper, the stress is, am I going to finish? Am I going to run out of time? There's so much of the test left, right? And the stress for this is, I don't know how to get this question right, so I'm
Run
worried that my
time.
score is going to be
Yeah.
terrible if I miss this question. Especially, I remember when I took the GMAT for real a few years ago for research purposes, it came up with a first question on math and I couldn't do it. I couldn't solve the question. And this is the first question. And I'm, for my job, I'm supposed to go get the highest score I can so we can analyze this test. And I got very, very stressed. And luckily I stopped and thought, okay, what can I do? And I came up with, because I'm a tutor, I came up with a strategy for solving the question, even though I didn't know how to do it. And luckily got it right with educated guessing. And so I was able to do it. And of course, none of this mattered because I wasn't planning to go to business school. I was just a tutor doing it. But I was extremely stressed. And imagine how stressed a student would be, right? And so a big part of the process right now for paper test is telling these students, hey, you don't have to solve every question. Skip that question, go do a different question. If a question stresses you out, laugh at it, don't worry about it, go do a different question.
So is
The
this a for sure
tendency
thing?
that is computer adaptive by question?
Yeah.
Well, that's what they said.
Okay. Okay.
So, they a couple of years ago, they said they were going digital and then they didn't even do it, right? University of California system said they're scrapping the SAT and they are designing their own competitor to the SAT. They said that 2 years ago. There have been no announcements of any type about this new theoretical test that University of California is supposed to be developing. So who knows if it's really going to happen? And so, yeah, it is entirely possible that a year from now, College Board is going to say, okay, here's what our digital test actually looks like. And it's not computer adaptive
Right.
like that,
Yeah.
right? But they say that and it's true, a computer adaptive test can be way shorter. So instead of having 58 math questions on the current SAT, a computer adaptive test could probably get an accurate score with only 30 questions, possibly.
Well,
Right?
and they are saying it, as I read, and I know you've read as well, Bobby, that this assessment, this test is going from 3 hours to 2,
Right.
which I think will be a huge benefit too, just on the fatigue factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are definitely benefits here. Of course, we're evaluating just based on what they're saying. And so, that sounds like a big benefit. Only 2 hours. And it's mostly just getting these students to realize, this thing where you don't have to solve every question, but you have to do something. And how do you overcome the stress of having a question in front of you that you don't know how to do? It's going to be, I think, for the highest scores, it's going to be even more intimidating and scary for them. Because when, those students are so used to being able to solve everything put in front of them. And so yeah, that could be a really intimidating thing. And so, obviously we just can't wait until a practice test comes out so we can take a look at it and see what it's actually going to be like. But for now, it's just, we can only just think about the how this is going to work because when I think, okay, right now students have to go to a school, all the tests are given at a school, right? Currently. Generally, a lot of students can take it at their own school or at a nearby school, right? So now they're saying, okay, a school or a test center. So that would mean like the GMAT, GRE, and MCAT, you would go to probably a Pearson or one of those other test centers that are usually sort of in office buildings, and so you drive up and go to this office building and check in, and sit in this cubicle in a room with other students who are taking tests and you take the test on computer. That seems like a weird thing for a high school student to need to do.
Why? Because it's not
Just
it
going to
feels
an
foreign.
office building, and is the parent going to come with you, or the parent going to drop you off at this office building, and you go in there with a bunch of adults taking the MCAT? I don't know. It That just seems a little strange, right? But also, like, okay, so if that's how you take the test, but if you live in Crossroads, Texas, there aren't any office buildings in Crossroads, Texas. And certainly the nearest diagnostic testing center from Crossroads is probably Abilene or Fort Worth, right?
Well, I
So
mean, we were talking
so
before
you'd
the
have to be
show.
taking it at school.
Oh, I know, but that still exists, right? That they have to go to a place,
Oh,
right?
right, right. Well, what's the what I'm saying is, so for current students, the only choice is a school, and every school in the nation offers it. Now they are adding this thing where you could also take it at a testing center, except that, okay, but those only exist in big cities. So okay,
Sure. Yeah.
that's a new option, but it's an option that's not for the rural students really. But then it says, well, this thing, it's going to be delivered so that you can take it using your own device, or you can use the one of the devices provided by the school or test center. And but they didn't say anything about who's paying for all these devices. But it sounds like they're not saying we will provide the device. They're saying you can bring your own device. And so, I mean, I have taken a test on a device provided by a test center before. I took a GRE that way, and it was not a very good device.
Well, Bobby, and
Let's
I got to
say.
tell you, you've gone on
You know,
somebody else's computer, right? And you feel like that's the first time you've touched a computer. And
right?
it's the weirdest thing. It's like your computer is kind of, it is personal to you. So I can see for the kids that have computers or can afford that, great. But now are
Yeah,
we also going to have this weird divide because you've got people that, are can they use their own or not use their own or
absolutely. I mean, if I could bring in an iPad Pro and take it on that, and then other people are having to take it on some clunky, older device that may not work, may be really slow. I don't know, and they said, and I mean, of course, as other tests have gone digital, the MCAT, LSAT has had a digital for a little while, and they're still going back and forth on those. And the AP tests went digital, right, a couple of years ago. And so, like, there were immediately like enormous crashes and problems and all these things. And so they say that they're going to have this where the test will automatically save after every question. And so if you get disconnected or the Wi-Fi goes out or whatever it is, or the program crashes and you have to restart it, that it'll be fine. I suspect that there's going to be at least some problems like that. I mean, we just have to trust that they're going to be able to do that. But it is suspicious that there's no discussion of where all these devices are going to come from, that they say all these tests. I mean, I can't imagine, again, in some rural small town, that school is going to suddenly have 300 tablets that students can use to take the SAT. I'm not sure, right?
right. Well,
But
let's
we'll
talk.
know more later. Right?
Yeah, let's talk about the runway on this thing, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about
Mhm.
all these things that could
Right.
happen, but there is runway. They're talking
Yeah.
about spring of 24.
Mhm.
So they've got a couple years to refine and figure some of this stuff
Mhm.
out. And to get the schools prepared, get the students prepared, get
Absolutely.
the tutors prepared. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and so, like, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I remember I was on the team at Princeton Review when the SAT was changing in 2015, and the SAT put out well, first just one practice test and then a few more. And we had 6 months to create and design a, how to tutor students, how to prep for and write new strategies for this test based entirely on a couple of practice tests. And I will say, like, the strategies we came up with for the new design of the reading section of the SAT, the strategies did not work very well because the test ended up not actually being very similar to what they had put out as practice tests. They put out these practice tests, and there was an uproar saying your word problems are way too long, the math questions are way too difficult. There were many, many articles, newspapers everywhere about it. And so then the SAT changed it so the word problems weren't as long, and they changed how everything worked. And so you've got these Princeton Review books that were put out, and Kaplan and everybody else put out books based on here's how you prepare for these practice tests. And then the real test comes out and they say, okay, let's very quickly change our strategies to apply to discuss how this test works.
Well, the good thing is,
And so
Bobby, They've been through it once before. I know it's been a while ago, but you know how academia
Well,
is.
right. Oh,
I'm sure that
absolutely.
you've got people there that have been through the one time,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and so what's going to happen is at some point they will put out a practice test. We'll be able to start looking at it. Then you and I can discuss it, and everybody else can discuss it more. All right now, like I mean, the main thing is like, okay, this is going to create this runway period where you say, okay, there are students who are going to be deciding, okay, should I take this new SAT? Like there are students, I mean, probably like it's the ninth graders, the eighth graders. The ninth graders might possibly be able to take this their very last semester of high school if they wanted to. Otherwise, they'll be taking the paper. Current eighth graders, they're going to have this thing. Well, their junior year, they could take the SAT in paper, or their senior year, or the fall of their senior year, they could take it in digital form, right? Because it's going to change over. So there's a decision to make. And then there's also a decision to make. We don't know if the ACT is going to similarly make a change, but if they don't, which they probably won't, at least immediately, then you have the choice: do I take the digital SAT or the paper ACT? And so there'll be choices to make. And I don't know whether students would prefer a digital test or a paper test. I know that I think it's safer, as we talked about before, to take a paper test. But I'm an old man compared to these students. I don't know how they think, right?
Exactly. And I think that we've really got to rely on these kiddos to tell us and
Absolutely.
see these scores, because I don't think that we're a good barometer.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We just have to see what happens. But so I think a lot of students will probably welcome this change. I think a lot of students really hate the paper and the pencil.
I know they'll welcome the 2 hours versus 3. That's a no-brainer.
I will too. I mean, everyone will welcome that. It's going to make everything a whole lot easier. Absolutely. Right. It's always just this thing where, when you add in that plus the breaks, plus the driving and parking and all that, it ends up taking 5 hours out of a student's Saturday. And that's just,
Too much.
it's no fun.
It's too
Right.
much.
And
Yeah.
so that's something. And so I think for now, especially like given that it happens in 2024, current seniors, sophomores, juniors and sophomores, they are not going to have any experience of this other than just hearing people talk about it, right?
Yep.
Although I guess they have done pilots of this. Some students may run into more pilot tests of it, so it is possible that you might like get invited to go take it, but that's it. But
Hey,
it
and
wouldn't be
Bobby,
an official test.
and that's just more practice for these kids to, figure
Absolutely.
this out,
Right.
right? So, yeah, that'd actually be interesting, I think. Well,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like that, so that would be interesting to me, but maybe not them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But it's just interesting, and I think I mean, it is the way. I mean, someday all this stuff will all be delivered on computer, of course. And so it's just the growing pains of slowly doing it. It is interesting that College Board, there's one last thing. I think you remember us discussing this a couple of years ago. ACT had announced that you would take the ACT in paper, but once you had taken it one time in paper, you would be allowed to go to a test center and retake sections of the ACT digitally.
Mhm.
So you could go to a Pearson testing center and say, I'm going to take only the science section, or I'm going to take only the science and math, and go take that digitally. And then that would create a super score. They said that was going to happen. And then COVID came along. And again, there's still a web page on the ACT site that says they are transitioning to that you're going to be able to do it. It doesn't say when. It just says it's like, so they still theoretically plan to do that. So that's digital ACT, but only for retaking it, which is really strange.
Well, it is strange, and I'll tell you, there's something to be said for being the first out, but there's also something to be said for looking at how they screw it up and how to
Oh,
avoid that,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, when it comes down to it with this, as we start moving toward the runway, I've already been encouraging my students currently to take the ACT instead of the SAT, because College Board over the past few years has had some real problems with their tests. They've had test leaks of their test. They've had tests where parts of it have already been leaked on the internet. The entire math section was already leaked. And so you had students taking the test who had already seen it before. That happened a year and a half ago. You've had scoring scales that were inconsistent. So I've just been saying, look, the ACT is much more consistent right now. And that's certainly going to be true if you've got a paper test that's been the same for the last 10 years, and then you've got this SAT that's, like brand new and we don't know what it's like. Many students are going to steer their students to, take the SAT to ACT and then say, hey, if you want to try out the SAT too, hey, try it out, see what happens.
Yeah, you might as well, right?
It's good that we have the competition between SAT and ACT, because imagine if one of those companies went out of business and we just had everyone had to take this one test. That would be a bad situation. So
It would.
thank goodness that they are competitive and that they both have about equal market share. Look, it's what we need, So it's an interesting question for now. That's all it is, but it's kind of fun to speculate about. I'm glad that I don't have to go through it.
And we can go back and listen to this in a couple of years and go, okay, what did we have right and what did we just totally mess up? So it'll be interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Hey,
Well, I think
Bobby,
that's it. And
if somebody wants to get a hold of you or get on your radar, do you want to give out the 71441 or how do you want them to get in touch with you?
No, absolutely. So if you want to contact me, you've got my website here at the bottom of the screen. There's a contact me page there. Or if you text the name Bobby, right, to 71441, just that word, that will get you directly in contact with me, and it will send you a link.
And I just put it in the chat, so that should come up on all of our stuff. So awesome. And then, guys, the other thing that I included in the description is if you want to get a copy of our college planning timeline, you can get that, which helps you understand when you should be taking the SAT and SATs and, all the other things that go along with college. And it's, I got to tell you, Bobby, I've gotten some amazing feedback on our college planning timeline
I love it.
From lots of college coaches out there. They're like, it's simple, it's easy, you get the gist, it doesn't look complicated. So
absolutely. I mean, just knowing, okay, it's spring semester of junior year, here are some things I ought to do before you get to summer, right? Because otherwise you get summer and you just feel like you've got everything to do, right?
Yeah.
So this is getting those conversations started earlier, and just like, that's what it's all about, right? Simplifying things and just saying, okay, here's just a few things, do these things. Everything's going to get a lot simpler and reduce your stress. That's what this is all about, right? Is because I know this whole thing about SAT is changing. If you just hear that, you get very stressed and you're like, oh,
your hair's on fire. Yes.
One more thing I have to figure out. And so now that well, we've got several years and wait for the, it's really the 8th graders and 9th graders who are going to be the first ones to do that. So not something to add to your stress right now.
No, we've all got Runway. It's all good.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Great to see you. Have a good week.